please, Michelle, take it away. She is the current president, do I have my right title, for the National Space Society and co-founder of For All Moonkind. She is a professor at Ole Miss, and I just appointed one of my old interns who just started class with you, so he's super excited about that. So yeah, please, Michelle, take it away, and give my kid an A. All right, he's a smart kid. So, all right.
all my kids are smart. So
yeah.
I do have a PowerPoint, but I wanted to say first, I think Joshua just dropped off, but it was really fortuitous that that I'm going after him. You asked me to talk about outreach and about the For All Moonkind Moon Registry. I see a lot of familiar faces and names, so I'm not going to bore everybody with my usual For All Moonkind spiel, but I did want to say Joshua's company is also working very hard on outreach, and he's working with some NSS people with respect to remote operations centers in Africa. And so, on top of everything else that company is doing that's so cool, they really are sort of thinking about broadening their reach and the reach of space as much as possible. So bravo, and I'm sorry I didn't get to say that to him, and hopefully I'll meet him soon. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
He's got some of his other business interests pull him into Africa, so he's got some really great business connections over there that make that. Yeah, it's really cool that he does that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's really, obviously he's really busy, and I know that we're planning to try and meet, but it's yeah. So anyway, so it's just a perfect segue into talking about outreach, social. So I wanted to do something a little bit different. I think especially this weekend, we've seen a lot of negativity about space. And one of the things that I see over and over and over is this sort of frustration that we're not reaching governments, we're not reaching the public, we're not getting through to people. And I want to use this time to sort of talk about our responsibility. And I mean, everybody on this call, everybody who's in this webinar, who's listening on YouTube, we actually have a really important responsibility to make that bridge and build that bridge, because we are truly building the future. And we need to get the people who don't realize that to realize that. So today, I just want to sort of get everybody thinking about how amazing all of you are in terms of your commitment and passion, and how we get that to actually sort of transcend out of our little bubble and into the rest of the world. So let's see. Okay, yes. So as Michael said, I am the co-director of the Air and Space Law program at the University of Mississippi School of Law. Not only are we the only ABA accredited university to have an Air and Space LLM program, we offer more space law courses than any other university in the entire world. And the really exciting news is that in the 4 years, I'm starting my 4th year, we had 3 LLM students in 2018 when I started. Today we have 38. So we have an incredible growth of interest. Yeah, I will take credit for some marketing. No, I'm kidding. But this is just an incredible growth of interest in space law and in space. And I think it's just an incredible demonstration of this slowly people realizing and waking up to the fact that space really is the future, and space really is going to be part of everything that we do. At Mississippi, we're really focused on providing the regulations, putting us on the path for regulations that will support development and not hinder it. And so, sort of think about, and not just about sort of getting commercial industry into space, but also about what humans will look like in space. So among other things, I'm engaged in research that's sort of exploring the history of human migrations to better understand the evolution of the laws and moralities that create successful and sustainable civilizations. We don't have a lot of great examples from Earth, right? Right now I have interns working on sort of looking at the Polynesian expanse, because that's one of the few times humanity expanded without colonizing or taking over some other culture. So that's a really important part of what we do. And I know a lot of people think that's way out there and we're so far away from human communities, but we need to take steps today to do the things to make sure those human communities are the way we want to look like them, are the way we want them to look. I'm also, as Michael mentioned, the president of the National Space Society. This is a citizen advocacy organization. We are the voice of normal people who love space. And so we also at NSS are realizing, okay, we really need to reach who do we need to reach? We need to reach young people. We need to reach the students who are going to actually be, I'm teaching students who will actually be the legislators who will decide how things happen in space. And so the National Space Society, in nominating me as president, made a distinct decision to think about that policy, sort of realized, well, we are really at this point where we need to think about the law and the policy and the social aspects of space, not just about the technology, because the technology is well on its way. And so now we need to play catch up with the social and cultural parts of it. So one of the things that NSS does many, many things, and I've only been president for a few months, and I'm every time I open an email, it's like, oh, we're also doing this. So it's a remarkable organization. We have really increased our efforts to reach younger people. We have always had this space settlement contest for 6th to 12th grade students, an international space design competition, which is happening at the end of this month. Space policy and universalization debates, all for students, all for allowing high school and college students an outlet for their passion for space. And as president, I also created the NSS President's Legal Council, which brings together current space lawyers or professional space lawyers with students and so the students will be mentored by people like Jeremy Grunert, who is a space lawyer with the Air Force and is currently teaching at the Air Force Academy. And they're going to work on policy papers about things like what does it mean? What does Space Force mean? What should it be doing? What do we need to do in order to understand the concerns about the militarization of space? So I'm really proud of that program. And again, it's just a way to get more and more young people involved and make them understand not only do we hear them, but we really want to hear them and we really want to give them a voice because this is their future that we're worried about. And of course, for those of you who know me, I am also the co-founder of For All Mankind, international nonprofit, entirely volunteer. Not one of us makes a dime. We don't pay any consultants. We are also the only organization in the world focused on protecting human heritage in outer space. And that's not just Apollo, it's everything out there. Now, again, that doesn't mean every single thing out there that's been sent into space by humans needs to be protected, but certainly some things do. And so we really, what we want to do, and what I've learned in the 4 years since For All Mankind was formed is we're really talking about responsible space exploration. We're not really just talking about cultural heritage. We're talking about going out there and doing what we want to do and what we should do, but also understanding there are things that we shouldn't do, and sort of embracing that concept in space. So the Wild West frontier feel, it just is such a fallacy because we have the Outer Space Treaty. There are some rules. We need to sharpen them, and we need to sharpen them now and responsibly and rationally and flexibly and adaptively before some organizations come in and try and sort of impose things that make no sense. So the For All Mankind is a permanent observer to the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. It's a really great time to be there. The working group, the legal subcommittee just created a working group to look at space resource utilization. We don't know yet what the remit is. We'll find out in August at the committee meeting. But the great thing about the Artemis Accords, which I love, period, but they really sort of hastened this conversation. We need to have this conversation about how we are going to utilize resources on the moon and in space in general without causing conflict. So the other thing that we're really proud of at For All Mankind, I always take credit for getting Section 9 of the Artemis Accords, which talks about cultural heritage in there. Obviously, I was not privy to any of those negotiations, so I really shouldn't take any credit at all. But I do take credit for the One Small Step Act, which passed Congress last year and was signed by President Trump on December 31st of 2020. So the One Small Step Act is the first law in the entire world that recognizes that there is stuff in outer space that can be considered human heritage and that ought to be protected. Now, the act that I wrote didn't really come out the other end the way I wanted it to. So it's basically toothless. It really only affects companies that are partnering with NASA to go to the moon and requiring them to follow the NASA guidelines and regulations to protect NASA US sites. But what's really, first of all, again, the first companies going back to the moon will probably be going with NASA anyway. So we will have those protections in there. But the important thing about this act is that it recognizes, it's the first law in the entire world that recognizes human heritage in outer space. It shows US leadership in space once again, US willing to be a responsible space actor and make these decisions that will restrict activities, although as lightly as possible. The other really interesting thing about the One Small Step Act is, although it removed some of the language that I wanted, the House side put in language about due regard, which I really applaud, because what is going to guide us in terms of how we develop the moon and utilize lunar and space resources is this concept of due regard. And once we figure that out, and once we figure out what due regard means, then we're going to be in a really good position. So I also always say, it's really important that For All Mankind is not just about the boot prints. I'm not going to read the quote. The fact of the matter is that 193 nations on Earth have signed the World Heritage Convention and have agreed that it's really important to protect heritage. So we have agreement from every nation in the world that we need to protect heritage. That is a great way to start thinking about how to come to agreement about things on the moon. So this is when we talk about protecting heritage, what we're really talking about is finding something that can unify the international community, something universal that everybody can get behind. The other thing to think about is by gaining an international agreement on areas in outer space that cannot be touched, we are implicitly supporting and advancing the concomitant argument that there are areas in outer space that can be subject to some level of private control and even ownership. So when you look at heritage and you start saying, okay, you can't go here, that is a model for the things like safety zones that are being discussed in the Artemis Accords. And again, that concept of due regard, what does it mean? If we can identify, if we can get international agreement about what it means, due regard means for heritage sites, then that will provide the legal foundation for the safety zones or no trespassing zones, whatever we call them, when we have different operators pursuing activities on the moon. So enough about me. What I want to talk about today is changing the tone of the conversation about space in the media and why it's so important. Like I said when I started, that everyone here, everyone listening, works to get out of this space bubble that we live in and expand it to be more embracive. So use the recent articles about the Bezos Branson space race and how a lot of journalists have taken the opportunity to sort of talk about, oh, it's just egos, it's wasteful. The ones I love are, they should be spending their money on other things, feeding hungry people. There's a lot of very rich people in the world who don't spend all their money feeding hungry people. Yeah, Michael, it's clickbait, but people are reading them, and some people are saying, yeah, that's right. But this is what we don't want. We need to change the narrative, and the media is missing the point. And I think, Michael, you might have been the one who said it on LinkedIn, but the fact of the matter is this is really exciting. I'm thrilled that there's a competition. Humans thrive on competition. And so if they're gonna race, then go for it. I'm not going to be able to go, afford this for, hopefully in my lifetime I will, but bravo. And so I say, thank God they're willing to spend their money on this, because not only is it not just about billionaires going to get the overview effect, it's about creating the technology we need, or developing the technology we need for point-to-point travel, suborbitals. So what will that do? That's not just about getting to Australia in 20 minutes. It's about being able to deliver, for example, medicines or supplies in terms of when there's a natural disaster or war or something. So this is what, that's what is missing. This race is phenomenal, and it should be all very positive. And it's just seeing these kinds of clickbait, yes, but unfortunately those people don't actually click. They just read these headlines that are awful. So that's one of the, we really just need to change that narrative. And so when I think about how we're going to do that, I think, facts are usually secondary. And yeah, Manny, I agree. I'm trying to take these articles. There's that fine line, right? Do you take the article and put it up and say something about it, but then you feel like you're just giving them too much space or something? So I think we really want to take this sort of positive opportunity to start getting out there more and thinking about how we can get our much more positive message out there. So over the past several years, I've worked really closely with a diverse collection of environmentalists, anthropologists, scientists, and engineers who have voiced an equally diverse array of social and environmental concerns about space exploration and lunar development. So I quickly became aware that social and environmental are really very closely related, because when we're talking about protecting the environment, we're really talking about preparing for our future, and that's a social decision. So I want to, when I know that a lot of people sort of cringe when they think about environment, and no, we don't need more protections, but we're really talking about how we want our future to look. So put plainly and succinctly, the social impact of lunar development and the utilization of lunar and other space resources is going to be revolutionary. All right. So the things that we're doing, the things that have been talked about over the past 2 days are truly revolutionary. Achieving the capability to utilize resources from other celestial bodies, other worlds, will change humankind utterly and irreversibly. We are on the cusp of an incredible change, and it's really going to be tough to manage that transformation. When anthropologists talk about social challenges and the impact in respect of technological revolutions, they look first to social consequences. Thus, the original technological revolution, that of tool making, made us human. The agricultural revolution led to the development of villages, cities, and civilizations. The industrial revolution and digital revolution have fostered the current global economy and society. Now, this same anthropological perspective tells us that the space revolution is inevitably leading humanity into an entirely new and uncharted social realm. The ability to harness space resources and ultimately someday perhaps to build villages on the moon and elsewhere in space will have attendant social repercussions that we literally cannot even imagine or identify. Think about, at the time, who would have known that colonizing a new world on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean would result in the creation of a constitutional republic? When Columbus arrived in America, he was a catalyst that ultimately resulted in the development of jazz and many other cultural breakthroughs. It also led to some really horrible cultural developments, like separate but equal laws. Some may argue that the social impact of this space revolution that we're living, that we're driving, will be deflected by the fact that our initial lunar miners will most likely be robotic rather than human. But we need to bear in mind that even if for some odd reason human evolution stops here, and I don't think it will, but if for some reason humans don't follow the robots to space, our society is going to change nonetheless. It will be allowed to expand with the knowledge that we are not bound to our Earth for resources. It's a really, really powerful and liberating idea. From a social and anthropological standpoint, then we have to worry about two separate threads to consider. First, the impact on society today. So as I noted, the ability to harness space to our advantage is really powerful, but that power can be easily misled or misapplied. Take the digital revolution, for example. The digital revolution held the promise of more equality, more opportunity, more transparency. We're seeing some of that, right? But we're also seeing a more opaque culture, surveillance, capitalism, inequality, fake, and a culture crisis of narcissism and inanity. We were promised a better life with digital, and we got the Kardashians instead. We need to work to minimize the ill effects that may be produced by, I don't mean to call the Kardashians ill effects, but that's not quite what we wanted, right? But we need to minimize ill effects that may be produced by or the unintended consequences of space resource utilization. And while we can only guess what those might be, we can certainly address potential hypernationalism, corporate narcissism, and potential tyrannies. The second thing we have to realize is that developing the moon and utilizing space resources is not just going to alter our culture here on Earth. It will most likely lead to an entirely new culture in space. Even though our first miners might be robots, the fact is that humans are an exploratory and migratory species. It's in our DNA to want to reach out for that next frontier, that brighter horizon. Humans will accompany or follow robots to the stars. And we, the people who are leading the charge to lunar development, have to embrace the fact that every step we take today, every conversation we have, everything we do now will impact that new spacefaring culture. We are nurturing the seeds of that development, and it's up to us to make sure it has a healthy start. So how do we do that? Well, by being inclusive and far-reaching in our goals. The fascinating thing about space is that it has the power to unite, to breed cooperation. It is this collaborative aspect of space that we want to strengthen. This is not to suggest that spacefaring nations and companies should owe a tariff or a tithe to non-spacefaring nations. That's not what we mean when we talk about the benefits of space. It means that everyone who has an interest in space, basically all of humanity, needs to understand the opportunity that space offers. It could be as simple as encouraging all states to join the COPWIS or encouraging countries to join the Artemis Accords. But we also need to really change the narrative of space. Ultimately, I believe this is the biggest societal and environmental challenge that we face is apathy. We as a species are on the cusp of a new era. We are here in this room because we understand the tremendous implications, this virtual room. And I hope everybody feels the burden that we have, the responsibility we have to make this right. Because too many people just don't know or don't care. JPL's YouTube video of the first flight of Ingenuity has 2.5 million views after 2 months. To put that in perspective, Taylor Swift's video for the song Look What You Made Me Do garnered 42 million views in 24 hours. And all of that pales in comparison to the most watched YouTube video of all, which is Baby Shark at more than 7 billion views. This is a knowledge, awareness, and enthusiasm gap that we need to close sooner rather than later. Only if we capture the hearts and minds of the public can we build the political will to implement the changes we need to support and grow a sustainable lunar economy. So 600 million people watched the Apollo 11 landing live on the moon in 1969. It was a record held until 1981, when an estimated 700 million people tuned in live to witness Lady Diana Spencer marry the Prince of Wales. It's hard to imagine how to even begin to capture the attention of that many people today, barring a spectacle like the Beijing Olympics or something. But we have to remember Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were not entertainers or spectacles. They were conduits of hope, the agents who represented thousands of scientists and engineers whose unprecedented accomplishment reminded humanity of just how great we could be. People all over the world shared and reveled in the achievement, including, for example, a young man in Mauritius, I love this story, who made daily trips to the United States Embassy demanding information and actually built a small transistor radio, which he listened to during the humankind's first off-world footsteps. So again, today we're a far cry from 600 million viewers. In the view of the public, launches have become mundane. And again, too few people realize how much we depend on space for everything from communications to disaster relief. humanity's impending return to the moon offers us a tremendous opportunity to harness the emotion, hope, and exhilaration of our first moonshots. So I put this slide in because I have a real concern. We do have the popular culture, right? And there are movies like First Man, but these are docudramas. And so I have real concerns whenever I see a docudrama that people are going to say, oh, that's what happened. You know, like Apollo 13. Oh, that's what happened. Yeah, that's mostly what happened, but not entirely. And so this is something, again, you know, great to have this kind of publicity, reminding people about First Man, about what it was like. But we can't just rely on popular culture to convey what we need. So how do we reignite? Well, if you can't take people to the moon or human history on the moon, then bring the moon to the people. That's why in 2018, we embarked on an ambitious project to create a registry of all of the human-made items on the moon. From Lunar to Apollo to Chang'e and everything in between, the Moon Registry provides overviews of every mission that has impacted the moon, including details on the objects related to those missions that remain on the lunar surface, from commemorative medallions and flags to rovers and scientific experiments. Initially, the Moon Registry was intended to serve as a resource solely for archaeologists, scientists, engineers, and other professionals. Then we realized that this history belongs to all humanity. So we made this Moon Registry available to everyone for free. We also realized that human history in space is being created every day. So we made this Moon Registry dynamic. Finally, we realized that countless individuals made contributions to this history that may not have yet been recorded. So we added crowdsourcing capability and encourage everyone to add their own story. Our history is precious and our history is universal. That is why the Moon Registry will ultimately be preserved using blockchain technology to protect the integrity of the data gathering process. So the site needed to raise awareness, and as such, it was designed by critically acclaimed creative director Bernie Hoje, who was responsible for the multi-award-winning images from a lot of campaigns, but the most important one, most famous one being the Got Milk campaign, which is actually in the Smithsonian. The registry was also welcomed by two moonwalkers and historian and author James Hansen, Neil Armstrong's official biographer, among many others. Harrison Schmidt said, an interactive registry for all of the material on the moon is by human activity is a worthy cause without a doubt, introduced by human activity. Charlie Duke said, visiting the moon was an incredible privilege and experience. I can't wait for someone to go back and find the picture of my family that I left behind. In the meantime, the For All Moonkind Moon Registry is a spectacular resource. It's one small way to share this accomplishment of humanity with humanity. And Jim said, when you consider how important history is as a compass for our future, it's shocking to realize how inaccessible it is. The For All Moonkind Moon Registry is like an all-access pass to the history of human activity on the moon. Even better, the crowdsourcing function will allow the people who worked on missions like Lunar and Apollo to connect directly with the very students who will be inspired by their work. So as mentioned, the For All Moonkind Moon Registry is a dynamic work in progress. It displays facts about past lunar missions and seeks crowdsourcing assistance to correct any mistakes. We know there's a lot of errors in there. We know there's a lot of information missing, and we want people to come in and yell at us and so that we get it right. We include a lot of information, mission details, mission type. I'll have this site up. I think I'm supposed to be done at 6, so I will speed through and just want to note that we also want to include the future missions. We look forward to collecting information about future missions. So essentially, the Moonkind Moon Registry fulfills 3 functions. It's in its outreach and awareness raising capacity. Again, it's free for everybody. I don't know if you know Phil Stukes' encyclopedia of human material on the moon costs about $150 now, and it's a couple years old. This is free and it's dynamic. It works really well on a phone, and we want to give the moon. We want to give this to students everywhere, and we want students to realize, okay, hey, we're going to use a shovel on the moon just like we use a shovel here, and to just ignite that imagination. So I'm just going to close and say, outreach is not about making space popular. It's about taking responsibility for our future. and listening and supporting the students who will be living that future. So I hope that you go and visit our For All Moonkind Moon Registry. There's the link, and really think about, everyone who has participated in this conference has done incredible things and is really forward-looking. And we have an incredible responsibility and an opportunity to really shape the future the way it should be. Thank you very much for your time and for having me again this year. I should have said that in the very beginning. I love this conference.
Thanks, Michelle. I am very inspired by this Moon Registry. You and I have shared private conversations about how this topic is really important to me. I do want to point out Manny is our next speaker. He posted to the chat that his project Virtual Moon would like to work with you. So the invitation's out there. I think you all already know each other, but let's kind of like work hard to connect you all directly. All right.
Manny has been amazing. I think there are a few people on the call who have been reaching out to me, and it has been a hellish summer, if I may say so. So thank you all for your patience with me. I'll be back in the game soon.
Right on, right on. Okay, thanks a lot, Michelle.